بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
This is also reflected in this famous passage from Ayat al-Kursi where you say, وَمَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ وَيُؤْمِنْ بِاللَّهِ. Look at the same sequence. It is negative first and then the positive. Whoever basically does kufr, rejects the taghut, and then believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, فَقَدْ اسْتَمْسَكَ بِالْعُرْوَةِ الْوُثْقَى لَا انْفِصَامَ لَهَا. Then he has indeed got hold of a very strong source or rope which will never break. Now, when we look at this concept here, of course, at-taghut is a very general term. It is basically used for all categories of false gods. One of the concepts in Qur'an is that when a person looks at his own hawa, his own evil desires, and considers that to be his God. You know, when we look at the, of course, everybody has desires. And we constantly, deal with it. It is a challenge for us. And we constantly try to be closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by suppressing the evil desires. That is part of the imtihan. But when the evil desires overcome us, and where we start saying that Allah says this is haram, but I say this is halal, that is where now you are replacing your desires with God. And this concept is not just, it's not a khitabat, it's not a rhetoric statement here. If you look at Surah Furqan, Surah number 25, ayat 43, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addressing the Prophet, he says, أَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهُهُ هَوَىٰ. O Muhammad, have you seen or do you know of somebody who has taken his desires for his God? So this concept is there, that you can replace God with your own desires as a ilah. اتَّخَذَ إِلَهُهُ هَوَاهُ. He takes his desires as his ilah and his God. فَأَنْتَ تَكُونُ عَلَيْهِ وَكِيلًا. O Muhammad, then you will be a counsel for him? Speak on his behalf? No. And this problem of, following our own desires, considering something which Allah has said haram to be okay, it's not a new problem. It has been there from day one. But in the past, all these things were done on a personal, individual level. But now in the modern days, we are actually facing a problem where this phenomenon of following our sinful desires has taken a social form. And to be more clear about it, look at LGBT movement. It's not that this is not as a new phenomenon. This has been there. You had the story of people of Lut. But this social, form of it, where it has become a movement, where they have this lobby and influence in the societies, from the legislation to the school boards. Of course, we live in a non-Muslim country, which is a secular country. We believe in this concept of live and let live. But we will not agree and we will not allow other groups to impose their views on us. We have our own moral values. We should not be forced to change our religious and moral values just because the trend is changing. This is where we have to stand firm on our moral values. We don't want to impose our values on others. This is not an Islamic society. So that whole discussion is out of the context, The legal system allows, we have nothing to do with that. But that should not be forced upon us, to the extent that we see even in the elementary school. This idea is being promoted in such a way, it's not just an issue of, live and let live. It is an issue of saying you have to accept this. And that is where we have the problem. And, it is not an issue that we can compromise on it. When it comes to same-sex marriage or relationship, this is clearly haram. And there is no room for any, personal ijtihad on this issue. There has been an attempt even on this issue, but no. It is very clear. Okay, and this is where, even when it comes to some of these articles that I've seen, they even bring this whole story of Prophet Lut's people. And they say Qur'an has condemned this same-sex relationship only because it was forced, implying that if it is by consent, then there is no problem. And I read this story of Prophet Lut in different parts of the Qur'an again and again and again. I don't see that. They are just reading their own version of history to justify it that even Qur'an is okay. You look at Surah number 7, ayat 80 to 81, Surah number 29 and ayat 28. You will see Lut alayhi salam says, أَتَأْتُونَ الْفَاحِشَ مَا سَبَقَكُمْ بِهَا مِنْ أَحَدٍ مِنَ الْعَالَمِينَ. Repeated in another surah also. Al-Fahisha is being used for what they were doing. Another ayat, 27, Surah 27, ayat 54. وَلُوطًا إِذْ قَالَ لِقَوْمِهِ أَتَأْتُونَ الْفَاحِشَ. Then again, we come to Surah Anbiya, Surah Hud, ayat 78, where it says, وَكَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ السَّيِّئَاتِ. They used to do sayyi'at. And then another ayat from Surah Anbiya, ayat 74, where, the malaika are saying, we basically rescued Lut and his followers from that city. التي كانت تعمل الخبائث, because they were involved in khaba'is. This is the plural of khabitha. And they were وَكَانُوا قَوْمَ سُوءٍ فَاسِقِينَ. So you have all these terms in Qur'an saying that what they were doing was indecent act, it was an evil act, it was a disgusting act, it was sinful act. Where do you get this issue that this was, only because it was forceful? And this is where we have to realize that, this kind of reinterpretation of Qur'an in order to just justify, our own whims and desires, this is actually part of this system where we are trying to replace Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with our own hawa and havas. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the strength to be on the sirat al-mustaqim, inshaAllah.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad.